But anyways, see, I was about to start. Look at you coughing. Look at you.
It's a dry cough.
Oh man. What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Roliver Queen. I'm back. And as always, I'm once again joined by a lovely, spectacular, magnificent, and elegant homie. Sai, why don't you please reintroduce yourself to the people?
Hi, I'm Sai. It's really nothing else special to say.
Well, let's just get this out the way. So apparently the algorithm loved the last time me and you talked. Like that Black Panther video is still racking up numbers, by the way.
That's cool. Maybe it's just Black Panther.
It could be, and I think it what also helped was when I dropped it, I think that's when they had announced that I think it was either issue one or issue two was going into like second printing. So like the algorithms were just firing off like
Mhm.
all over the place. Yeah, well deserved. It was a great convo, and like there was a lot of comments, and the comments are still coming in. So obviously, I want to say thank you, for helping me out, and also thank you to everybody who enjoyed the content. So it's definitely helped. That's actually why I'm past 700 right now.
No problem.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said, I'm not here without the homies. I'm not here without the homies. Today we are here to talk a little bit about women and comic books. Me and Sai, we met over Twitter. I was looking for folk who were also talking about I Am Batman back when it was good, and then I came across Sai's tweets. We just hijacked Sai into just like our little group. So yeah, we just roped her into the shenanigans. She fits well with all of us. It's a pleasure talking to Sai. It's a pleasure just like getting Sai's opinions on things. So today I just wanted to, pick Sai's brain, about, comic books, like how did she get in, what did she think about the industry, what did she think about, male centered comics versus female, centered comics. And all of that. But yeah, let's start with the basics. Sai, how did you get into this shit?
Back in 2015 or 2016, Marvel announced Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and then Black Panther came out, was announced, the movie was announced,
Hmm.
or Black Panther being in Civil War was announced, something like that. So I decided to go to a comic book store to get Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur because it was a little black girl. And I was like, I just want to support it so that they make more things like this. And then once I went to the store, the people were really nice and they told me to look around. And I just started grabbing books off the shelf. Typically, if I saw like a black person or particularly a black woman on the cover, I picked it up, or a black girl or whatever just looked colorful and interesting. And I flipped through and I bought four comics that day.
Hmm.
And then I've been going back to that same comic book store since then.
Sai said a very important thing. She saw something she liked and she wanted it to keep going. So you know what Sai did? She kept fucking buying.
Yep.
So just a little something here for people, buy the shit that you like. Any marginalized character, just you want to see more of them, just buy them. But yeah, that's a dope introduction to the comic book game. And obviously, he's still going there, and it seems like you've been picking up like way more books. Comic book shop is, I feel like we don't talk about them enough. It's a great introduction, and comic book shops are what can help keep people, in the game. Like I'm not here 15 or so years later in the game without my comic book shop as well. So I don't know if you want to say their name or whatever, but if you want to give them like a quick shout out, and I could even just put their information in the description, feel free to. But if not, no pressure.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a local store. I think it's the biggest comic book store on this side of the country. It's called Coliseum of Comics. I
oh,
know
okay.
it's the biggest retailer in Florida. And I have a local shop called Doombrowski that I
Hmm.
go to get my Marvel and indie books. I mostly get my DC books from Coliseum of Comics because they get everything. And that publisher has trouble with some of the smaller shops.
In a way, you have no choice but to double dip.
Yeah,
Okay,
but I
okay.
wanted to make sure I supported the local store as well as the bigger one.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I'll yeah, so salute to you guys. I'll definitely, put the stuff down in the description. So if anybody's looking for a comic book shop, whether it's a small one or even a big one, anything helps, when it comes to supporting, our favorite hobby. Speaking of which, like, what are some of your favorite titles now? Like what are your go-tos? If you could give me like three or four of them.
100% the ultimate Black Panther. It's just phenomenal. The next one would be House of Slaughter, which is ending this particular story that it's on now, featuring Jace Boucher, black male character from New Orleans who's a ruthless monster hunter. Absolutely love him and will miss him. And I would say maybe the third one is The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. Cute comic by Tate Brumbaugh, who writes with James Tynion.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
House of Slaughter is also tying in too, right?
Yes, and Tate
Okay,
writes that one.
okay. Any one of those like women led or
Unfortunately, no. The books I had to go and write them down.
hmm
Um, the books that I'm currently reading by women, I want to say it's just Grimm by
oh
Stephanie Phillips, and I need to catch up on it. But honestly, Stephanie Phillips is great, and I regret not taking the opportunity to meet her in person when she came here a few years ago.
hmm
It was like right before she started Grimm. But I have faith in her as a writer. She hasn't disappointed me. But I think Bloodline, Daughter of Blade was like the last comic I read that was written by a woman, and I think she's a black woman.
well, let's dive in. So why do you think your pull list when it comes to women led comics are a little smaller compared to the males?
I think it's a lot of women in comics, but the vast majority of them seem to be the artists. So,
Oh, okay.
but in terms of writing, it's still male dominated.
hmm
And I was like wondering, is it the titles that the women get, or is it like the arcs that they get? I started to look at some of the reviews
hmm
um, on League of Comic Geeks, and it just seemed like a mixed bag. Like you had a lot of women writing indie comics, and then the women who were writing for the big two, they did well if they were writing a popular character. And then they
Mm.
did poorly if they were writing something that had to do with like a big change in a big title. Also, I will say I think DC does a good job bringing women in and other minorities. They typically do it through those anthology type books like
Yeah.
um, I think DC Power was one, and
hmm
then one that I actually bought a while ago, but I just read today, Lazarus Planet Assault on Krypton #1.
Yes.
Loved it. They have multiple stories. At least one of them is written by a woman. So shout out to DC for doing a really good job at bringing women into comics and letting women do more than just write or just draw. They can switch and do other things. Marvel does the same thing. I feel like DC may be doing it a little bit better and more frequently the quality seems better.
Yeah.
But Marvel does the same thing with their Marvel Voices books. And sometimes they'll have backups in main titles. I know Black Panther would have at one point they had like two or three backups in one or more of the Black Panther issues when John Ridley was writing it. So
Oh wait, really?
if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it was like an anniversary issue or something. They had like two or three stories at the end of one of the Black Panther books. Um, I think I would have to go back and figure out which one it was, but one of them was really good. Like it went into the history of that village that Tosin came from, or
hmm
something like that. I'm like drawing a blank, but I remember reading some backup stories in one of the back Black Panther issues. So we have something, but yeah, it's like they're trying. And that's why I was wondering, like, okay, once we get the name of these writers out, what happens once they do a backup or a small story or a mini? What happens then? Like, how does their career progress when they're given a different title? And so it's just kind of like a mixed, it's like inconsistent progress, but it's progress.
I kind of feel the same way. For example, I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about this run all over the place because it's still like top five greatest Batman runs. Mariko Tamaki. Mariko Tamaki did Dark Detective back in Future State. It was very short. No other Batman titles other than John Ridley's at the time. They gave Mariko Tamaki one of the dopest artists ever, which was Dan Mora. I forgot who did the colors, but it was a nice short story about just a future timeline where Bruce Wayne was on the run. It did ridiculously well to the point where she ended up writing Detective for I think it was about a year and some change. And here and there, I'll see DC do like similar things as well. We both felt a way about Trial of the Amazons, but I will give
Yeah.
DC their credit where credit is due. They start off with what is it, Nubian the Amazons, then Trial of the Amazons, and then they let old girl do some more stuff with Nubia. I like Power Girl. They actually had a Power Girl back up in Lazarus Planet. Leah Williams. I enjoyed that. Then they gave her backups in Action Comics, and then it spawned out into its own book. I think DC is trying as well. Marvel, I'll be honest, I can't speak on what I don't see too much. Like the Marvel voices, I don't. I feel like that's kind of something they just do, but I feel like there's a little bit more effort with like something like DC Power
Mm-hmm.
or even DC Pride. You know what I'm saying? Like they put a little bit more marketing into it. They let you know these are the creatives that are on these books, whether they're A or B or C list. Like again, not to say Marvel doesn't do it either. I know Black Panther run that we just talked about is ending. E-viewing,
Mm-hmm.
they're giving her an X-Men book, which I was like,
I think she'll do well.
wish that book nothing but the best. I don't have too much confidence in this new X-Men line, but the creatives that they have on there, I think this is a good chance, especially e-viewing. This would be a great chance for her to not only start new, but to really win a lot of people over. You're getting a brand new team. The story seems pretty cool, so that's a good way for her name to propel as well. And I know Gail Simone's doing one of the books as well, so they're both trying. They're both trying, so I'll give them that. But I know we kind of got into this last time, but do you think there's like any barriers as to why maybe we don't see more women-led titles or women creatives behind these books versus the male? Do you think there's like any barriers?
I don't know. I don't know what I said the first time. I would love to know what I said the first time, but I don't know. I would
Mm,
love to know, like, from an industry perspective, is there like a woman that I do know? And I do know a woman who writes.
mm-hmm,
And she just got a deal for a comic book. It'll be like a YA or a children's type book.
mm-hmm,
So not anything we read. I feel like her answer would be different than mine because she's in that industry. But
mm-hmm,
I really don't know because I feel like women get a chance, especially in the indie portion of comics. They
mm-hmm,
do. For the bigger ones, I think they try, and the barrier tends to be maybe the readers. If it doesn't
mm,
sell, they're not gonna keep running the title, and that's true for everybody.
yeah.
Um, Male, female, whatever. So I'm like, it's hard when you add new characters. It's already like starting behind because now you have to build up a fan base.
Mm-hmm,
And then if you give a woman a big title like Black Panther, now they have to deal with established fans who have really high expectations. And from what I've seen, it's like nobody can like meet those expectations or it's very hard. So I'm like the barrier I guess is the reader and
Yeah.
their expectations, and then you have people with limited funds and they may want to support a book, a creator or a character, but they can't because they don't have the money. So I'm like, I don't know if it's the company per se as much as it's us.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah, I also think it's a mix of things too. I said this in one of my recent videos, and I think I've said it plenty of times also. I feel like there's a lot of male characters that have privileges that women characters don't. What do I mean by that? I think we both know enough about Spider-Man, Batman. If Spider-Man is or Batman is not selling well, which is very hard for it not to do, if it
Mm,
slips past a certain point, they're not gonna cancel Batman and then have us wait for a new creative team to go on Batman. They are
true.
gonna kick off that creator and then they are gonna get the next person in line because they need that book to keep pushing X amount of money because there's IP behind this character, there's merchandising and all that. I think the only woman that has that privilege is Wonder Woman. They have to keep Wonder Woman in print. They don't have a choice. Um, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of women characters. Unfortunately, they don't have that privilege. Like it would be dope if Stargirl, right? That would be great if Stargirl could start off, with the ongoing, or maybe a mini to ongoing. You know how things go these days. And if things don't work out, okay, can we call somebody else to jump on the book versus us having to cancel the book, take a risk on relaunching again, maybe 5 or 6 years later down the line, versus a Batman or whoever who gets maybe like a 2 3 months, to relaunch. I think a lot of that does have to do with like a mix of the readers and creative as well, because I feel like if there was more better care taken when it comes to certain women-led comics, like if y'all were putting some of y'all best creators on these books, okay, cool. Let's maybe they'll have more of a standing. So whenever you get to the point of, oh, this book ain't selling well, you guys already know, hey, we want to keep this book going. Let's put somebody else versus it's just having a drought for the longest time. Because like Power Girl, when was the last time Power Girl had a book before this? A long time. So I think it's a mix of both. And I think fans, especially males too, I think we could be a little bit more open to certain shit. I try to be open, but guys like what they like, unfortunately.
People do.
We can be a little bit more open in terms of readers. Also give a little grace as well. Some people, they know how to write for trade and they know how to write from month to month. You know what I'm saying? Just because a writer may be a slow burner doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you gotta take a little longer to get to where you need to go. Speaking of which, what has your experience been, in the comic book fandom versus, the shipping or fan fiction, AAO3, Tumblr, where the stuff that you came from before.
I would say the comics fandom is a little bit more normal. We focus on the stuff that matters as opposed to shipping, which is like I'm too old to care about that as much as these kids care. They're a little unhinged and it gets in the way of people's real lives, like in terms of harassment. So I
Mm,
don't I don't go there too much. But with comics, the community is fine for me. I feel like everybody has to curate their experiences. I've met great people, men and women. I'm in like a comics book club that I need to start going to more often. But it was started by the woman I was telling you about before. It's a black woman. She writes comics, she writes all types of things. And
mm.
she does this book club every month, and we read bigger comics, like a full graphic novel
Oh,
that
okay.
finished. So it's great. It's very welcoming. I feel like I'm around smarter people than with the shipping side of things.
Thank you.
A little bit more brain activity happening with comic book readers. Not a lot of brain activity with the shippers, unfortunately. So I like it. I have a good relationship. I have been like dragged on the internet twice. Um I don't care though cuz I was right. But
You want to tell the people what it was for again?
I think maybe it was just one time, but it was over those Miles Morales being other superheroes things, and people were mad at the Thor one because there was real graffiti in it. And then they got mad at something else, and that writer didn't even write it. So when I defended him, they told me I was like A Train from what is that show? Oh my gosh, the one on Amazon, The Boys.
Oh no!
Yo, I was like, wow, that's
Oh
crazy.
no!
But nobody was around when they found out the issue that they were complaining about wasn't written by that guy. And so it's like all that energy just gone because y'all don't actually buy comics. Y'all just go off of whatever screenshot you see from a big account on Twitter. Hot mess.
But so far, besides that, it sounds like you had a pretty good time in the space, or you're having a good time.
It's welcoming.
Hmm.
From the comic book stores I go to and the people I'm around there, it's welcoming. It's welcoming at conventions, it's welcoming on the internet. Um, Nobody has made me feel like I don't know what I'm talking about. If I don't know something, I can ask. People are always willing to help or recommend things. I have had a great experience. Probably better than in the real world with other things. So yeah, you know how women complain about, like, people mansplaining things to them? I don't I don't get any of that.
We just tell you, oh, okay. So Batman, so he fucked Catwoman, and then after Catwoman, he was sleeping around with Talia, and then Damien was born. Damien's a little shit. Yeah, that's how. Yeah, we just explain to you like it is. It ain't that deep. We don't need to mansplain.
Or, like, pretend like I don't know. I'm given the benefit of the doubt. I'm usually spoken to as if I do know something,
Mm,
which just does not happen in real life. And then I'm like, "Wait, I don't know what that is." And they're like, "Okay, well, I'll explain it to you, or you can read these things." Like, I'm
mm,
treated like a smart person rather than like somebody who needs my hand held.
okay, okay.
I appreciate it.
You said something key here. Curate your timeline. Curate what you see. Lord of mercy, I need to do a better job of doing that shit. Because I'm happy to hear that you've had like a pretty good experience. I always wonder, especially when new people, especially like women get into, the fandom. I know it can be a little crazy sometimes, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation. Also, is because it's like I know on YouTube, based on what I've seen, I feel like there is a lot of, excuse my language, scaring the hose when it comes to comic books. I'm serious. Like
Probably.
like you go on YouTube and let it be a woman led. Oh my god, it'll be some dude. It'll be either some old white dude or some tap dancing black dude talking about you shouldn't read this comic because this creator did X, Y, and Z. I'm like, God, like, what if you were just a woman who was just trying to read Wonder Woman or try to find some information, and the first thing you click on is, come on now, I feel like in certain places it's welcoming for women, but there's some other places it's not. Like, because I feel like depending on where you go, you see a lot of fuckery. So that's why I was just like, why y'all can't be scaring the women like that, man. Like you don't know what people's algorithms are like. A woman's introduction to a character could be that dumb video you just put out for no other reason, just because you just want to make people mad. But also, I do agree. There's some places, I think Reddit is pretty fine. I think Twitter, when it wants to be, it can be fine. Instagram is great. I think Instagram is the least problematic.
Yeah. I haven't
Uh,
had any issues on Instagram, and I get to talk to the creators without even having to deal with other people,
oh yeah,
which I prefer anyway.
I don't know how TikTok looking like. I'm scared of TikTok.
I'm
Um,
not on there. I'm too old. I just aged out of it, out of new social media. Like, I'm not doing anything else.
from what I see, I think they're pretty alright too. It's just like a lot of this like young kids who are getting into it. So I think it depends on where you go. I would like to see, especially more on like the YouTube side. I like to see more welcoming. Like that's why I put out a video like a couple months ago, just like, all right, women-led comic books you should read. Just try to get people in because I feel like one of the things that's kind of stopping, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the reasons why anime is as big as it is because women have helped make anime cool.
You know what? You're right, and I never noticed this before, but everything I've learned about anime has been from another woman. The stories are also they have a wider range of topics that are more welcoming for women. That's
Mhm.
one thing I don't think we discussed. The
Let's get
topics,
into it. Let's get into it. Let's go. Let's
like,
take it away.
I'm assuming, I don't know how women at large feel about superheroes, but that tends to be like the core of comic book writing. Whereas in anime, you have stories about anything. It could be romance, it could be anything. And I think that in and of itself makes anime more welcoming to women than comics, because maybe women don't care as much about action and fighting as comic books would have you care about. And I think anime comes out in like a book format.
Yeah. Hmm.
So with comics, you really have to commit and stay on top of like getting something every month. It's like people can't even take a pill every day.
Me
It's
included.
probably a lot harder to stick to picking up something every month, like a piece of a book, as
Hmm.
opposed to a whole book. So, but yeah, I also think the topics, because even I love reading about romance, and I just don't get a lot of that. I mean, I could set that aside though. Like, I don't know. I like a good fight too. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I
You
guess that's
throw
just
some
me.
blows.
But like, yeah, I think comics isn't as you don't have as many opportunities, at least with the big two, to branch out of action. Like the main thing has to be action to the point where people don't even like a book if it doesn't have any action. So with that kind of like tight parameter, it's gonna cut the audience down by a
Yeah.
lot too. So are we expecting too much? Like, are we wanting women to be a part of something that just inherently isn't going to have a lot of women involved simply because it's kind of narrow?
Think so. Because personally speaking, I can see why women aren't too geared towards comic books. Again, a lot of it could have to do with just like topics. I think a lot of it has to do with like marketing as well. Like
Mm.
it's like, are you guys even trying to find the women where they are? Are you doing, some search engine optimization? Like see where they are on the internet. If they're not on Twitter, because people seem to think everybody's on Twitter. If they're not on Twitter, where they at? They probably on TikTok. They're probably
There's
on
book talk.
IG. Hmm.
You know what? There's book talk too,
Yeah.
which I don't follow, but the girls in my other book club, they do. If they marketed some of these graphic novel, they would probably have to market it as a graphic novel because again, the whole monthly thing. So
Yeah.
they
We're
would have
working
to
it.
do it in trade or an omnibus or hardcover type edition, but they can market to Book Talk, find some of the biggest accounts and get them to review some of these comics or something. And
Yeah.
that's actually where they might get a little bit of help from hiring people who've written novels like Eve Ewing. She'll have people who want to read her comics. And people, same thing with Victor Laval and Ta-Nehisi Coates. Like people they had never read a comic before, but they read Black Panther because of Ta-Nehisi Coates, or they read um, Ironheart because Eve Ewing wrote it and they were confident in her writing. So if they get the right accounts on social media to market these comics, more people would read. But also, you got Eve Ewing on Black Panther. So maybe putting Eve Ewing on a book that's not about a man might do well.
Hmm.
I don't know. So I don't know. I guess like even though comics have been around forever, it's still finding its footing